Behind the dazzling smiles and airbrushed magazine covers are stories of talented individuals who went too far under the knife. From frozen faces to startlingly altered profiles, these are the 10 stars who looked in their mirrors and were filled with profound regret, their journeys revealing the immense personal cost of chasing an impossible standard of perfection. Megan Fox was instantly hailed as one of Hollywood's most stunning actresses from the moment she captivated audiences on the big screen. Her natural, uniquely exotic look became an undeniable trademark, setting her apart in an industry of manufactured beauty. But the immense pressure to maintain that specific image in an unforgiving and critical industry slowly began to take its toll. Over the years, observant fans began to notice subtle changes at first, which then evolved into not-so-subtle alterations to her appearance. What had started as minor, cautious tweaks eventually escalated into a full cascade of procedures that many critics and supporters alike argue fundamentally altered the very foundation of what made her beauty so distinctive and captivating in the first place. She openly admitted to the decision of removing her breast implants, calling them ugly, and stating they made her feel profoundly uncomfortable in my own skin. Going beyond that single procedure, she has spoken extensively about the surprisingly addictive nature of cosmetic enhancements, confessing to numerous lip injections and other fillers that she felt, at times, left her looking like a clown. Her then-husband, Brian Austin Green, was reportedly a consistent voice of caution, often expressing his personal preference for her original natural look. Now, Fox says she is consciously focusing on dissolving old filler and wholeheartedly embracing a more natural aesthetic. And if you believe Megan Fox's story is primarily a lesson in the importance of moderation, then the next celebrity's surgical journey represents a full-blown physical overhaul. Lindsay Lohan first captured the world's heart as the radiant, freckle-faced, and incredibly talented star of beloved family films, representing a fresh-faced, natural beauty that seemed to radiate from the screen. As she navigated a notoriously tumultuous and public transition into adulthood, under the harsh, unrelenting glare of the paparazzi, her physical appearance began to change in dramatic and unsettling ways. The intense, crushing pressure of international fame, combined with a series of deeply personal struggles, led her down a confusing path of cosmetic procedures that fundamentally and permanently altered her once familiar and beloved face, leaving many of her fans barely able to recognize the person they had grown up to love. Lohan has, in her more stable adult years, reflected on this chaotic period with significant regret and newfound wisdom. She has admitted that the constant and often cruel scrutiny made her hypercritical of her own appearance, directly leading to impulsive decisions she would never make today. The pronounced overuse of lip filler and various other injectables in particular created a distorted and unfamiliar version of her natural features, a look she has since worked diligently to reverse through dissolution procedures. Now living a more peaceful and structured life largely away from the Hollywood spotlight, she has dissolved the majority of her filler, gracefully allowing her original classic features to resurface. While Lindsay Lohan's drastic changes were largely a product of growing up in the intense spotlight of the 2010s, another major star's physical transformation was so gradual and subtle that many did not even realize. John Travolta remains an undeniable icon for multiple generations, a man whose face, from the disco floors of Saturday Night Fever to the pulpit of a Pulp Fiction diner, was once one of the most recognizable and beloved in the entire world. However, as he confidently entered his 60s, the astute public began to notice a strange and gradual change. His once incredibly expressive and malleable features seemed suddenly smoother, noticeably tighter, and at times almost unnaturally immobile, losing the dynamic quality that defined his most famous characters. While John Travolta himself has never fully detailed or confessed to every specific procedure, he has openly admitted to feeling the immense, often unspoken pressure placed upon leading men to stay perpetually young within the ruthless environment of Hollywood. In various interviews, he has carefully hinted at trying certain things that he firmly states he would never, ever do again, strongly emphasizing that he now genuinely believes in the grace and dignity of aging naturally. Close friends of the esteemed actor have suggested in anonymous reports that after the tragic and untimely death of his beloved wife, Kelly Preston, he meaningfully stepped back from any aggressive cosmetic maintenance, choosing instead to focus more on his family and personal well-being than on his external appearance. The visual contrast between his public look in the mid-2000s and his more recent, softer-featured and gentler appearance is undeniably stark. From the quiet, dignified regret of a legendary leading man, we now turn to a true talk show queen whose very public and dramatic surgical choices became a national conversation topic for years. Sharon Osbourne, known for her sharp tongue and brutally no-nonsense personality on popular talk shows, has never been one to mince her words, especially when the topic involves her own life and personal choices. For many years, Sharon was famously open about her great love of plastic surgery, famously stating to anyone who would listen that she'd had everything done from head to toe. However, the very procedure she once so publicly and proudly championed eventually, and ironically, became her most vocal and biggest regrets. The major turning point for Sharon arrived when public criticism and concern over her increasingly taut, stretched, and visually distorted facial features became too loud and widespread to ignore any longer. Osbourne later confessed with startling candor that she had unequivocally gone too far, painfully admitting that her face was, in her own words, a mess, and that she had begun to look like a lizard. She squarely blamed a perfect storm of incompetent surgeons and her own notoriously addictive personality, explaining that she simply could not stop once she had started down the path of alteration. She has since taken corrective actions, having some of the extensive filler dissolved and several implants surgically removed, while now publicly advocating for a much more conservative and thoughtful approach to cosmetic work. And if Sharon Osbourne's story is ultimately about the difficult process of reversal and correction, the next celebrity's profound regret is deeply rooted in a single defining surgical procedure that changed her entire career and personal identity. Ashley Tisdale was beloved by an entire generation for her breakout roles in the global phenomenon High School Musical and the hit Disney Channel series The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, where her large, wonderfully expressive eyes and unique, charming profile were considered a key part of her immense on-screen charm. So, when she publicly re-emerged after a hiatus with a noticeably and drastically different eye shape, her fans were universally shocked and deeply concerned. Tisdale had, it was revealed, undergone a blepharoplasty, or cosmetic eyelid surgery, a procedure she initially and firmly claimed was performed for purely medical reasons to correct a debilitating hereditary condition that affected her vision. However, the actress later expressed deep and heartfelt regret, not for the decision to have the medically necessary surgery itself, but for the aesthetic result that followed. She bravely confessed that the surgeon had taken far too much skin from her eyelids, drastically and permanently altering the fundamental shape of her eyes, and, in her opinion, creating a permanently surprised or startled expression. She revealingly discussed the profound psychological toll this surgical outcome took on her mental health, stating that she truly did not recognize the person staring back at her in the mirror and subsequently fell into a period of depression. Her candid social media posts and interview disclosures about this difficult experience provided a rare moment of raw honesty in an industry that routinely hides surgical mishaps and outcomes. From a story about a specific, defining feature change, we now move to a narrative of a total body transformation, where our next star's extensive surgical journey was largely fueled and financed by explosive fame. Nicole "Snooki" Polizzi, the pint-sized powerhouse from the cultural phenomenon Jersey Shore, became an instant and iconic figure, known for her towering big hair, her even bigger personality, and crucially, her original, completely natural nose and petite frame. As her meteoric fame and personal bank account grew exponentially, so too did her publicly stated list of desired cosmetic procedures. Over the years, the world watched as Snooki underwent a truly dramatic physical transformation. She received a rhinoplasty, a significant breast augmentation, liposuction, and began receiving regular Botox and filler injections, effectively replacing the original Guido Fabulous girl from the shore with a smoothed-out, artificially amplified version of herself. But the party, much to her eventual chagrin, did not last. Snooki has since voiced significant and public regret about her surgical choices, particularly focusing on her breast implants. She cited ongoing health concerns and a powerful, deeply personal desire to get back to her original self as the primary reasons for ultimately having them surgically removed. She also admitted with refreshing bluntness that her first nose job was unfortunately botched, which led directly to multiple stressful and painful corrective surgeries that still left her feeling unsatisfied and unlike herself. While Snooki's extensive changes were very much a product of the reality television boom of the 2010s, our next star's deep-seated regrets hail from a much earlier era, a time when extreme plastic surgery was first becoming a dangerous and addictive staple. Janice Dickinson, who famously proclaimed herself the world's first supermodel, possessed a strikingly unique and exotic look that genuinely defined an entire era of high fashion. However, as she aged and her high-profile modeling career naturally began to wane, Dickinson aggressively embarked on one of the most extensive, expensive, and publicly scrutinized surgical journeys in all of Hollywood history. What had likely begun as simple maintenance-oriented tweaks quickly spiraled into a full-blown obsession, resulting in a dramatically overfilled, severely over-tightened, and often disturbing appearance that, sadly, often drew more media attention than her legendary and groundbreaking career ever had. She has publicly cataloged a seemingly endless list of procedures, including countless facelifts, brow lifts, cheek implants, and literal liters of filler, that she frankly states have left her face feeling as hard as a rock. She has openly admitted to being completely addicted to the process of surgery itself, constantly and desperately chasing a youthful ideal that was always impossible to recapture. Now, in a state of resigned acceptance, she says she is finally done with going under the knife. From the glamorous, cutthroat world of international modeling, we journey next into the world of music, where our next star's surgical regret changed not just his face, but his entire voice and public persona in ways he never intended. Robert Matthew Van Winkle. The artist known as Vanilla Ice, while he is best known for his brief but explosively popular music career in the 1990s, also underwent a truly dramatic physical transformation in the subsequent decades. Observant fans and followers began to notice his formerly soft, boyish features becoming increasingly rugged, artificially chiseled, and severe, with a prominently, almost cartoonishly square jaw that sparked immediate and widespread rumors of extensive facial implants and massive filler use. The once boyish and energetic rapper was now publicly presenting a hypermasculine, almost caricatured version of his former self, a persona that seemed crafted for a reality television landscape rather than the music studio. In recent years, the rapper has expressed a tangible sense of regret over these choices during various podcast interviews. He has admitted that his foray into extreme surgeries was largely a misguided response to his rapidly fading fame and a deep-seated personal insecurity about his evolving place in the world. He described a prolonged period of his life where he felt utterly lost, and he believed that radically changing his external appearance was a viable way to invent a new, more relevant person. However, he eventually came to the powerful realization that the new, hardened exterior did absolutely nothing to fix the internal problems and emotional turmoil he was experiencing. He has since taken action, having some of the most prominent facial implants surgically removed, and he now states that he feels freer and more authentically himself than he has in many years. Our next celebrity story powerfully shows that sometimes the deepest regret is not necessarily about going too far in an aesthetic sense, but about not fully understanding the devastating long-term consequences and significant health risks of a procedure at all. Iggy Azalea. The Australian rapper's meteoric rise to international fame was almost immediately accompanied by intense public scrutiny and discussion of her body, with her curvaceous hourglass figure quickly becoming a central defining part of her artistic image. Early in her career, she was surprisingly open about having undergone a Brazilian butt lift, or BBL, a notoriously risky and potentially deadly procedure. At the time, she seemed genuinely pleased with the initial results and the attention it brought. However, as body trends rapidly shifted away from the exaggerated BBL look, and the dire mortality rates associated with the surgery became more widely known to the public, her personal perspective on the procedure changed dramatically and irrevocably. Azalea has since spoken out with deep and sincere regret, going so far as to call her BBL the worst decision she has ever made in her entire life. Her regret was not solely based on the aesthetic, which she felt became dated and working against her brand almost overnight, but more importantly, on the significant, life-threatening health risks she unknowingly took. She has now become vocal about actively discouraging her young and impressionable fans from ever considering a similar surgery, using her platform to promote a message of body positivity and genuine self-acceptance instead. And finally, we conclude with a star whose surgical regret is intrinsically tied to a simple human desire to remain relevant and employed in a notoriously youth-obsessed industry. Wayne Knight remains forever immortalized in pop culture history as the wonderfully villainous and whiny Newman on the seminal sitcom Seinfeld. A character whose round, wonderfully expressive face and malleable features were a key part of his comedic identity and success. So, when he later appeared in public and on television looking significantly slimmer and with noticeably tighter, smoother, and strangely gaunt skin, the overall change was universally described as jarring and disconcerting by fans. It was a textbook case of what many now call Ozempic face. But when combined with the telltale signs of an aggressive facelift, it left him looking strangely unfamiliar and stripped of the jovial essence that defined his most iconic role. While Wayne Knight has publicly credited his substantial weight loss to disciplined diet and exercise, he has been decidedly less vocal and transparent about the obvious cosmetic work he has undergone. However, sources close to the veteran actor have repeatedly suggested in anonymous reports that he privately regrets the extent of the procedures he allowed. Their public regrets serve as a powerful collective reminder to value and embrace our natural selves. What did you think of these incredible transformations? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below, and be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more honest and revealing looks into the fascinating world of fame.